Have you ever felt like time is going by way too quickly? The passing of time is a funny thing. It's something we all experience, but at the same time, it's something that not many people actually stop to think about. When we're young, we take it for granted that we have a lot of time ahead of us, and we'll have time to do everything we want to do. And a lot of us even spend a lot of our youth wishing time away so that we can finally get to adulthood and experience some of the privileges that comes with being an adult. The funny thing is, when we actually hit that age and go a little further than it, we start looking back and wonder where all that time went and how it all just flew by. With this video, I'm not claiming to have the answers to the universe on how to speed up and slow down time. People much more accomplished and intelligent than I have mapped out concepts and tried to explain just that. Instead, I want to offer you a perspective based on lived experience on how I went from seeing the passing of time as something set in stone that would always just be faster and faster every year, to seeing it as something that I actually had control over and could actually dictate based on the actions I took and how I chose to approach my day-to-day life. I remember really vividly being 14 or 15 years old one summer and chilling with one of my best friends and going into one of those really deep rabbit holes where you're just chatting about life. We were speaking about how summer those days used to just fly by compared to when we were super young, and we just kept digging deeper into it. If you think back to when you were a child, you might remember that summers used to last a lifetime. And there's a reason for that. Your 2-month summer break as a 5-year-old used to make up over 3% of your entire life up to that point. Over 3% of your entire existence had just been spent blissfully not having to go to school and just chilling out while it was warm outside. Now that we were 15 years old though, my friend and I realized that our summer break that year was going to take around 1% of our lives. And my friend and I realized that each subsequent summer after that was going to be a smaller and smaller percentage of the time we had been alive for. Now, it's not like we had just discovered some earth-shattering theory that was going to revolutionize the way the world worked. Einstein famously put together his theory of relativity, which you can slightly spin for this example to state that the rate at which time passes depends on your frame of reference. Although the theory itself, at least from my understanding, refers to more concrete frames of reference like physically being in different places, the logic at least seems to hold firm. All we did was apply that concept to our holiday scenario and thought of ourselves as quasi-philosophers for doing so. At the time, I just took it as a given, and I continued to go through life expecting that it would just get faster and faster as I grew older. But I just chose to ignore certain exceptions. The time in the exam hall, when I'd go up to speak in public, when I was nervously waiting for something, or when days were just filled with uncomfortable situations. At all of these specific moments, time just seemed to go by slower, and in some cases even just stop altogether. I thought that that just was how it was, and it was the inevitable flow of time that no one had any control over and everyone just experienced the same. But it was only this year where I had a moment that it started to click for me. If the passing of time is relative, in other words, subjective to the interpretation of each individual, then the perception of how fast or how slow it goes must be down to the way that the individual chooses to live and view their life. The thing with this day and age is that the majority of people seem to live out the same 6 months, twice a year, on repeat for most of their lives. They might get a little promotion here or an achievement there, but for the most part, they just go through the motions every day, come back home tired, waste a bit of time before going to bed, and then get a bad night of sleep before starting it all over again the next day. The weekend comes around and they just see that as their chance to let loose. So they start consuming their substance of choice for the next couple of days and use it as an escape from reality before getting back into bed on Sunday and waking up Monday morning just for the cycle to repeat itself for another week. If that's the case, then no wonder life zooms by. It's just the same shit over and over again with the occasional holiday or special event in the middle. You're just taking the same experience and having it relative to a larger sample size as time passes, which just means that in hindsight, it's going to end up feeling shorter and shorter. When I look back at my university experience, it's as if the logic that my friend and I had laid out all those years back had actually started to come into fruition. The years flew by, in and out of lectures, handing in assignments, reading different topics, meeting different people, and having a good time more often than not. My last couple of years in university, at least until the lockdowns in 2020, were pretty much a repetition of the same month over and over again for about 20 months straight. And no wonder it just felt like it flew by. Since then though, for the past 3 years, I've been working on various different projects of my own as well as with others. Moving fast, progressing on different things, picking up knowledge, skill sets, connections, several victories, and many more failures, and developing some wisdom along the way. The interesting thing is, when I look back at the last 3 years, it honestly feels like it's been a lifetime. I can confidently say that I've fundamentally changed as a person, and I've definitely developed a lot more than I had during the 3 years of university, where I at the time thought that I was maturing as I was getting older. And don't get me wrong, I've had great days where times have just flown by, and I've equally had fucking terrible days where it just seemed like the world around me was going to collapse. But when I look back at this period of the last 3 years, when I've actually started to put more effort into the outcomes that I get out of life, I can honestly say that my perception of time has completely shifted. The thing with the whole perception of time thing that we're talking about is that we're always talking in hindsight, looking back at what's already happened. If you're sitting in a cubicle all day, punching away at spreadsheets, and you hate it, the days themselves probably feel like a fucking drag, and no wonder. Equally though, it's the friends that I have that are in these types of jobs that tend to be the ones that say things like, oh, this year's just flown by, or I can't believe it's been so long since that thing's happened. That's not to say that things aren't that different in entrepreneurship in that sense though. Some days are really long, where you're just doing shit you don't want to be doing and chipping away at something that is going to take a while to see it properly built out. But that's just part of the game. Equally though, the perception of time that I have is entirely different. I once had a friend on a podcast say something along the lines of, if you don't look back at who you were 6 months ago and don't think you were cringe, you're doing something wrong. I've also had friends who work in spaces around me who say things like, every month I feel like I'm leveling up, drawing on that notion that every day they're learning something and building themselves up. When I look back at myself from 1 year ago today, I can see so many things that I wasn't as good as I am now, and so many things that I just didn't know anything about that I now have on lock. And equally, I know that in a couple months' time, I'm gonna look back at where I am now and think about how much I've already improved and how much progress I've been able to make since this point here. Especially now that I'm getting on camera, sharing some lessons, putting myself out there more, I know for a fact that it's going to be an easier progress to actually track how much better I get over time. And I know that the first 10 reps that I put into this are going to be nowhere near as good as I could be if I had optimized myself. But equally, that if I keep going and chipping away at it, by my 100th rep, I'm going to be much better than I am now. That goes for anything from starting a business, going to the gym, approaching new people to start conversations, improving your mindset, recording content, or anything that requires any level of proficiency. By putting yourself in hard situations, challenging yourself in different ways, and pushing to improve at any given thing, you will naturally get better as you do more reps. The more that you change and the more that you improve as time goes on, the more your perception of time actually slows down. Because you have clear, distinct phases between where you're at now, where you will be then, and where you were at 6 months ago. And that way you can really see how far you've developed and changed as time went on, which gives you an entire perception of it because you can trace yourself in different phases throughout. So, how can you actually start implementing that and start to see time go by through a different frame of reference? More than anything, choose to get better at something. Listen, I don't think business, entrepreneurship, or even being in the startup world is for everyone. But I do think that everyone out there can actually commit to getting better at any one thing that they choose themselves. Can you pick up a new sport? Can you commit yourself to changing your body composition in the gym? Can you commit yourself to learning a new language? Can you pick up a game like chess and really look to improve how good you are? All of these take commitment and none of them are easy. But equally, they're all worthwhile pursuits that you can actually get better at over time. The biggest difference you'll see is the difference you see in yourself. As you change and improve over time, the version of yourself that you look back at is different and not as good as the one you are now. Even better than that, if you keep consistent and start applying the mindset to different areas of your life, you can actively project the future version of yourself as even better. To wrap it all up then, why does it feel like time is flying by? As a whole, it's because we all perceive time in relation to our own life experience. And as we get older, we have a larger pool of time to compare our more recent experiences to. For a toddler, weeks feel like years because they take up a huge percentage of the time that they've actually been on Earth for. If you go through the same 6 months on repeat for years on end, that shit is just going to fly by. If you look back at this year that's just gone by and you feel like it's just zoomed by with no real distinct phases and it was all just a blur, chances are you either didn't do anything that significant or you don't feel like you've gotten better in any significant way. The thing is, we only have one shot at actually living our lives, and it's completely up to you how you choose to live it. If you want to make the most of it and challenge yourself to see how well you can do with whatever metric you set for yourself, then it's not just who you become that changes, but possibly your entire experience of how you see life as a result of that. I hope that was insightful. My goal here is never to tell you how to live your life. Ultimately, that is entirely up to you. As long as you don't harm others while doing so, the only one who's going to actually feel the negative impact of you not choosing to live up to your potential is going to be yourself. Whereas on the other hand, if you strive to improve and get better, others tend to benefit from that too. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with some of the upcoming videos. Don't forget to hit the like button if you've enjoyed this one as well. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments if you think I've gotten it right, if you have a different perspective, or the way that you just see the topic as a whole. I'm no scientist, psychologist, and at least not yet a philosopher. And I would be silly to think that I have things all figured out. But if this video helps at least one person see things slightly differently and feel like they can get better at something to improve the way that they perceive life, the job here has been done. Thanks for sticking through to the end. There's a whole lot more coming your way, and we're just getting started here. Looking forward to catching you next time.